Hi, this is Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. I'm joined by Sheldon Richman, the vice president of the foundation. This is the Libertarian Angle, the show, as you know, that brings you the libertarian perspective on what's going on in the world. Sheldon, last week, a guy named Steinberg got sentenced for an insider trading violation. Big trader on Wall Street. And, this has gone on for so many years. I consider it one of the most ludicrous aspects of the whole regulatory state. In fact, I couldn't help but just laugh when I saw what the judge said. The judge's name is Richard Sullivan, a federal judge. He's got all this gravitas up there, as federal judges tend to do. And he lectures to Steinberg that this is not a trivial crime. Well, it is trivial. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't even be a crime. But Sullivan is mired in that old status conformist mindset that most lawyers are mired in. They don't think outside the box. They automatically assume that any regulation or law that the federal government passes is this grave law. Well, as far as I'm concerned, insider trading shouldn't even be a crime. What do you think?
It's a complicated issue, and I think it takes some explaining to people, because I think the first instinct is going to be like the judges, that there's something not quite right about people buying or selling stock when they have information that other people don't have. Of course, if you trace that out, that premise out, you would get some pretty horrifying consequences. Knowledge is never evenly, quote, distributed. It's not actually distributed at all, but obviously it's never even. People have all kinds of knowledge that differs from other people, and people are going to always have information about companies that some other people don't have. But people think, well, if it's inside, if a person somehow has a connection with a company and has knowledge that's not readily available, there's something wrong with that. And we should be able to show that the problem is with that theory, not with the trading itself. For example, the law is inherently very vague. Some knowledge isn't regarded as inside, even if it's possessed by an insider, even if it's possessed by a company officer or manager. So it's the lawmakers and judges have to have it up to their discretion to decide what is a violation and what is not a violation. On the other hand, it also misses the importance of what the price system is all about. The price system functions best when it incorporates knowledge as soon as possible. And the idea that people should not be able to trade on their knowledge is really a call for the price system being less effective and efficient than it could be. It's better if prices incorporate up-to-date knowledge as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and my feeling is why not let each company make this decision? A big corporation may say, well, as part of your compensation package, we're going to let you trade on information that you acquire within the firm or as part of your transactions with other firms, and then disclose that's the policy of the firm. If stockholders don't want to go along with the deal, they don't have to buy stock there. They can sell their stock and get out. Another company may say, well, no, it's our policy that you're not going to be permitted to do this if you're an officer, an employee, and then people can make their judgments accordingly. It just doesn't seem to me that this is a role of government. I mean, this is your classic regulatory state where the government has a myriad of economic crimes that they can go after people with. And instead of just leaving it to the free market, let each company decide for itself what its policies are going to be, and let consumers and stockholders make their decisions accordingly.
Right. And of course, this is the time to point out that we don't have a free market except for insider trading laws. We have all kinds of government interventions that handicap competition and that favor, I think, the well-connected which tend to be the larger companies. That's the kind of thing we ought to be concentrating on. That's what progressives, if they really care about corporate power, which I don't think they do, they rely on corporate power, but if they cared about it, that's what they'd be looking at. Not something like insider trading, but the kinds of things that handicap competition and give unfair political advantage to certain well-connected big companies.
Well, that's one of the distinguishing characteristics of libertarians, but I would throw conservatives in there too. The conservatives love these regulations. It's big government in its purest form. It gives the regulatory agencies a great degree of power over companies, over businessmen. It's like a hammer that's hanging over their head, a federal hammer. And when you've got, thousands of regulations and economic crimes and economic violations and so forth, it's so easy to keep everybody under control, because every businessman knows that if they get out of line, if they start opposing U.S. foreign policy or the drug war, or they come out publicly against some kind of federal policy, that the feds can go after him. And it's so easy to find some type of economic violation that they can go after him on. I mean, we see this in Russia. I mean, Putin is a master at this. That somebody starts bucking him in the business community, even a billionaire, and Putin knows that he can go after him with tax violations, regulatory violations, and bring him to heel, put him in the penitentiary. It's no different here in the United States. Businessmen know they got to play ball with the government, because otherwise the government can do very bad things to them with this whole regulatory scheme.
Well, that and the other side of it being the influence that big companies have on the government and the regulators themselves. So it's really a pretty it's a mutual association. But you're right. These laws are vague, and someone said that probably every day somebody commits at least probably one crime. Mostly federal, I guess, because there's just so many. It used to be 5 federal crimes at the national level. There's now something like 3,000. So all kinds of things regarded as crimes. And back when Giuliani was a U.S. attorney going after Michael Milken, and they bragged, his office bragged that they had turned what used to be regarded as mere technical violations into felonies. And that's what we could expect U.S. attorneys and others to do. They expand their own power, their own prestige, the size of their offices, their budgets, the staff. And they have a built-in incentive to look for these quote heinous crimes of which in fact are not real offenses against people at all.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Milken, because you can get a good sense of whether something should be a crime by the type of people that they're going after. And Milken was a prominent, reputable guy. They go after him. They send him to jail. And then it's revealing that this judge in the Steinberg case, he tells Steinberg, well, I think you're a good man. I think you're a good man, but I need to send you away for 3 years. And then you have people like Martha Stewart that got all wrapped up with the insider trading deal. They ended up getting her for lying to a federal official. I mean, can you imagine that, lying to a federal official? Federal officials lie to people all the time, and they send her to jail because she did what they always do. I mean, look at NSA Director Clapper. I mean, this guy commits perjury. Martha Stewart didn't do that. She just, supposedly lied to an investigator, and Clapper gets away scot-free. It's like a different system of justice for the federal officials, or at least those in the national security state apparatus. So good people, as Judge Sullivan says, are getting sent away for these inane crimes, which to me is a good reflection of how inane they really are.
Well, I think this is a good time to say something about prison. And this is a prison-happy, hysterical society we have. We have more people in jail, both absolutely and in percentage terms, than anybody else. People go to jail for all kinds of things, and it's just it's an outrageous stain on the United States. It seems to me that our first resort is to throw people in a cage, whether it's for having a little bit of marijuana on them, or for whether it's trading on information that the government says is improper to trade on. The prison industrial complex needs as much attention as the military industrial complex.
Well, I'm reminded of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, where she has that slimy bureaucrat saying, I forget what his name was, a slimy bureaucrat that said something like, Look, you think we want a nation of good, clean, law-abiding people? That's crazy. He says we want violations. That's why we have all these rules and regulations, because we want people violating the law so that we can control them. And a good example of this whole thing, this whole syndrome of insider trading and the hammer that's held over American businessmen is the case of Joe Nacho. He was the CEO of Quest, nationwide company, reputable guy, prominent guy. The Bush administration after 9/11 approaches him along with the CEOs of other telecoms and says, we want you to engage in illegal action and we want you to keep it secret from the American people. It's going to be illegal. We're going to ask you to violate the confidence of your customers and turn over your records to us. And we want you to violate the law. We want you to keep it secret. This is your job as a patriot. And while the CEOs of the other telecoms said, bowed down, went to their knees and said, yes, sir, I'll do anything you want me to Nacho's everlasting credit, he said, no, I will not engage in illegal activity and I will not sell my customers down the river. Well, he learned, and of course the message gets sent out to the entire business community, what happens when a guy bucks the establishment. They immediately started canceling federal contracts for Quest, and then they start looking. And they start searching to see, where they can get Nacho, and they get him on this ridiculous insider trading violation. And which they can get any businessman on it. If it's not insider trading, tax laws, IRS, whatever. I mean, that's the advantage, again, of the regulatory state. They ended up sending him to jail for, 6 or 7 years. He just recently got out. But to his everlasting credit, he doesn't apologize. He doesn't, bow to the government. He did the right thing, and he knows he did the right thing. And if only there were other CEOs and other businessmen taking that kind of position, saying, no, I will not engage in your wrongdoing no matter what you do to me. Then I think we could start changing the direction of this country if we had more people like Joe Nacho.
Right, but people don't want to spend time in prison, so we really have to focus attention on this penchant for locking people up, for virtually anything. Maybe you could make a case for someone who's chronically dangerous as a matter of self-defense to lock them away. But, that doesn't apply in many, many cases. It certainly doesn't apply to Nacho or the insider trading guy with the hedge fund or so many of these other cases, or to drug offenses, or, you name it. There's all kinds of nonviolent people who are being held long periods of time in government cages, and it's outrageous. I mean, people ought to be just appalled by it, but people don't get appalled by anything. I mean, look what's going on, and they just go about their business acting like if we ignored it can't bother me.
Well, right, and you look at conservatives, they're famous for calling for free enterprise. That we're really proponents of free enterprise. Well, enterprise that's free means free of government control and regulation. That's something that conservatives don't seem to get. It's not free enterprise in the sense that you don't have to pay for it. It's enterprise that is free of government control. And this was the great breakthrough for people that believed in free markets and free enterprise. They said, wow, let's have enterprise and government separated, just like we separate church and state. We don't let the government regulate religious activity. And this is what distinguishes us libertarians. We want to do the same thing. We want to separate economy in the state. So that just as like we don't have the state regulating religious activity, it wouldn't be regulating economic activity either. And that's what free enterprise originally meant. The idea that enterprise would be totally free of government control or regulation. So as you point out, it's not just insider trading laws. It's any type of control or regulation or felony or misdemeanor in which the state is making it an offense to engage in economic enterprise freely. I mean, you've pointed out, for example, these occupational licensure laws that are really just benefit their protection racket for the people that already have the licenses, lawyers and doctors and hairdressers and any number of other people. That this is your regulatory economy that conservatives call free enterprise.
Well, and that's what I keep hammering away at. The people who claim that they're concerned about corporate power, could show they really did have that concern if they would go after the things that hamper and handicap competition, a potential competition for big companies. But they never do that. I mean, the pattern is too clear to miss. They'll favor things like regulations on mergers and acquisitions and insider trading, but none of that really touches at the corporate power, which flows from government power. It's what I always call the most dangerous derivative. Corporate power is derived from government power. But the people that, who are most vocal about taming corporations, as they might say, never talk about those things. They talk about these things around the edges, which just, gives the whatever regime's in power, like you say, the ability to hammer any given particular business person at any time if he should, run afoul of what that particular regime wants, so they can hit him with insider trading or something else. But they never go after the things that disempower people, like licensing, like all the things you mentioned, zoning, all the things that keep people from going into self-employment as an alternative to working for somebody else, or alternative to working for a big company. And that is very indicative. One person who stands out to his credit on this is Ralph Nader. And he's got a new book out, which I haven't read, but I've been reading something about it, and I plan to take a look at it. He actually wants to attack the corporate state. In fact, he sees his allies among libertarians in attacking the corporate state. And his whole thesis has been attacked by progressives who say, no, Nader doesn't seem to understand that the big companies can be our allies in various things. Well, of course they do. They fund progressive organizations. They play all sides of the street. They're not friends of liberty, but they are friends of the corporate state. So here's Nader getting attacked by so-called fellow progressives because he wants to put the spotlight on corporatism. That's where the spotlight needs to be, the partnership between corporate America and the state.
Yeah, that's fantastic that Nader sees that, because, all too many liberals, leftists, progressives, they look at libertarians and they think that we're defending the status quo. This gigantic government business partnerships, the bailouts and so forth, and they say, oh, this is free enterprise, and you libertarians defend free enterprise. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Number one, it's not free enterprise, not rightly understood. And number two, libertarians ardently oppose this kind of system where Wall Street firms are in bed with the government, where there's this constant rotating system where you go into government, you become a regulator, and then you go back to the company. I mean, as we libertarians have pointed out, the progressives bring these regulatory agencies into existence with all these highfalutin good intentions, but inevitably they're taken over. The regulatory agencies are taken over by the companies that are being regulated. And so there's a nice little you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours type thing, and we'll give your company officials jobs in the government, and we'll have a place for you to go back to in these companies with high salaries. This type of thing we oppose as ardently as we can as libertarians. And so we are with Nader on this. Your term, the corporate state, is perfect. It's a system where the government and business, big business especially, are in bed with each other. And the people who pay the price are the people, the poor, the middle class, the ones that get victimized by this thing, the bailouts of Wall Street and big corporations and so forth. This is all just a crony system in which they're helping each other out with our money, our taxpayer money, and in the process, keeping everybody well behaved and really conformist with this hammer that they have over their head that if you don't play ball, we will come after you with regulatory or tax violations and we will send you to jail. So yeah, we've got to raise people's vision to a higher level here. It's not just insider trading. It's the whole paradigm of the government business partnership and getting into bed with each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. Libertarians need to be careful because occasionally they do slip into sounding like they're defending the current system as if it were the free market. So I think you need to be careful. There's a temptation often to see the enemy of your enemy as your friend, and if you hear progressives attacking a big company for something, like a big oil company or pharmaceutical company. There's a tendency among libertarians sometimes to, almost in a reflexive response, come to the company's defense versus, the progressive, because you're thinking, well, the progressive's against the market, so if he's criticizing this, I better defend it. It may be that both are culpable, that both are wrong. And so and by pointing that out, of course, we then really do distinguish our product, right? We show how libertarians differ by criticizing both those who would further hamper the market, but also those who have already gone to great lengths to hamper it for their own financial interest. That's what shows our value, I think.
Yeah, and to add one more thing to this is that while, they keep the IRS code in existence in large part to provide this hammer again, because, hardly anyone can go through life without violating some kind of IRS regulation. We libertarians would just abolish the entire income tax, so you wouldn't even have that issue. So we don't even talk about how to reform it and how to clean it up. Hey, let me shift gears here, though. And talk a little bit about this phenomenon that's taking place primarily right now in baseball, since this is baseball season, but you see it in all the sports. But I was noticing in the baseball games that they're glorifying the military, Sheldon. And you've got these promotional campaigns now. Come to the games and celebrate the American spirit. That's what they call it, the American spirit, by praising the troops and glorifying the troops. And then you go there and then during the game they have all this glorification of the military and so forth, the national security state. And this is such a warped view of patriotism that I thought, let's talk about this. It says, what does it really mean to be patriotic? And if you go back to 1776, the people that we call patriots were the ones that were standing against their own government because their government was engaged in wrongdoing. So they were making a rational judgment, a reasoned judgment, saying, I cannot stand with the troops. I cannot stand with the government when it's using the troops in a wrongful way. And so our nation was born out of a sense of patriotism, which meant standing up against the troops, standing up against the government when it's engaged in wrongdoing. And it seems to me that we're now returning in these baseball campaigns, other sporting campaigns, to the old British notion of patriotism. That means support your own government, which, of course, some of the colonists were doing, regardless of whether the government's doing right or wrong. It's the old Germanic attitude of support your nation when it's in war, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. It seems to me that this is another distinguishing characteristic of libertarianism. We stand for the principle that it is the duty of a citizen to stand up for what's right, and not have this blind allegiance to the government, this blind glorification of the military. And that if your government is in the wrong, then you stand against it. And even if that means stand against the troops that are the instrument by which that wrongdoing is being implemented.
Well, an earlier generation of people, men and women who these days would be regarded as conservatives, I don't think they use the word themselves, but I'm thinking of the people around Robert Taft, and Taft being sort of the weakest exemplar of it, but nevertheless still an exemplar, were anti-militarist, and were constantly warning about the dangers of militarism. I don't think they would have been too on board with this idea that every time a military person passes by, you're supposed to get down on a knee and kiss the cuff of the pants and thank them for the service to the country. They understood that the military industrial complex was a scam, was a racket, to put it in terms of the Marine Lieutenant General Smedley Butler. They weren't taken in by this, and yet this is just a sheer propaganda. I mean, I remember a couple of weeks ago watching a baseball game on TV, and it got to the seventh inning, and I think it was at Yankee Stadium, and they announced that there would be everybody would sing God Bless America, and they had as a symbol for all the military people one person who had been in Iraq. And, of course, the crowd went wild, applauding, and then they sang the song. And I kept thinking, and I even said out loud to people in the room, do they have any idea the shape that the American military left Iraq? Iraq is a hellhole, riven by sectarian violence and an authoritarian ruler who is known as the Shiite Saddam around the country. And Americans are cheering, like the American government did something good in Iraq. What are they cheering? Do they even know what's going on? Do they care? And why are they, adulating these the people who volunteered to go over and do terrible things over there? I mean, we have a lot of work to do because you're right. The way people react to this kind of thing is not a very good sign that we've made any headway with them. We have work to do.
All right. Well, let's face it. A soldier, when he signs that contract, agrees to kill anybody that he's ordered to kill, and to torture anybody he's ordered to torture. I mean, he's expected to follow his orders. And let's face it, there's no such thing as the Geneva Convention anymore. I mean, it's there, but we saw it at Abu Ghraib, we see it at Guantanamo Bay, we see it at Bagram, that soldiers will obey orders. Now, does that mean that all soldiers are torturing people or killing people? Of course not. But in any organization, you're going to have a division of labor. You're going to have your torture team, and you're going to have your invasion team, and you're going to have your support elements and so forth. And really what we need to be doing in a sense of patriotism, of a love of country. You see, their sense of patriotism is a love of government. Oh, whatever the federal government's doing, let's praise and adore it and worship it. Really, patriotism is a love of country. It's a love of principles. And what we need to be doing in this country is to be talking about the founding principles of this country that didn't involve invading Iraq or invading Afghanistan or assassinating people in Yemen or assassinating people in Somalia or pivoting toward Africa or pivoting toward Asia or NATO expansion toward Russia. It didn't involve any of these things because our American ancestors said that's not what America's going to be all about. And so to me, Sheldon, the true patriot is the one that says, let's see what's right and let's see what's wrong. And let's apply it to here, this whole national security state apparatus, which, let's face it, the troops and the CIA and the NSA are the instruments of. I mean, that's how they accomplished the surveillance and the invasions, the occupations, the assassinations, the regime change operations, everything. And then let's examine this. Is this something right for America? And then the true patriot says, if it's not right, then I'm going to take a stand against it. Government's not going to like that because the government doesn't like dissidents. Whether you're talking about the Russian government that doesn't like dissidents or the U.S. government and the national security state, they don't like dissidents. They don't like people questioning their apparatus and their control on power. But to me, that is the true patriot. The one who's willing to have the courage of his convictions and say, this is not right for my country and I'm going to take a stand against it.
Well, now you just need to get the rest of the American people to agree with you. I have a feeling they wouldn't call Ed Snowden a patriot if they were given a choice between calling him a patriot or calling him something else, a criminal or a traitor. I'm not too confident about how that poll would come out today. I mean, there have been polls in the past which are sort of divided, but there's been no rousing support for Snowden as if he were some great hero and demanding that he be allowed to come home without threat of punishment. I'm not seeing that. So like I keep saying over and over again, we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, but see, that's a fascinating point you bring up. Because you got Snowden and you got Glenn Greenwald, who, of course, was the instrument by which the Snowden documents and revelations were revealed through the Guardian newspaper. And to me, throughout history, you've had this battle taking place between people that love big government and they love powerful government, totalitarian type government. The more powerful, the better. And then you've got this other line of thinking which really are the libertarians, the people that say, no, we want a free society. And so you can see this throughout history, this battle between the people that love liberty and the people that love omnipotent government. And that battle is being, in my opinion, reflected right now in terms of the people that are supporting the NSA surveillance operations, the very existence of the NSA, the very existence of the whole national security state apparatus, a CIA. And to me, these are all attributes of totalitarian regimes. They were brought into existence, the CIA, the big military, the empire, after the Cold War. Well, Cold War is over. And so to me, it really goes to show that it had nothing to do with the Cold War. It's just part of this historical move toward omnipotent government. And so who are the patriots in this thing? You raise a fascinating question. I would argue that the people that are opposing this thing, and Snowden, from what I understand, Snowden doesn't even want to get rid of the NSA. I think he said that his revelations will make it a better organization. I mean, that's horrible, because there is no way to reconcile the NSA, the CIA, the giant military, the empire with a free society. You can't have a free society as long as you have this apparatus in place. But I think where they have been so effective, and to answer your point, why do so many people believe this? Because they've been inculcated with a mindset that this is freedom, and that this is necessary to their freedom, to protect their freedom. The interesting question is that if they ever break through like we libertarians have and understand that this is and the antithesis of a free society, that you don't have a free society when you have this apparatus, then which way will they choose? I mean, we libertarians say we want freedom. We don't want this apparatus. But I think most people, we don't know. The jury's still out. Is if they really know this isn't freedom, which way will they choose?
I hope we get the test of that. I'd like to be more optimistic, and I'm open to the case for optimism. I've always been a long-term optimist, but the question is, how long is the term? You're right, but we need to bring them to the brink of that breakthrough, and we hope they'll choose freedom over slavery.
Well, that's why we do this show, right? The Libertarian Angle, to bring people the libertarian perspective, the perspective that you and I both know you're not going to get in the mainstream media, especially not on the mainstream talk shows, and certainly not in the mainstream newspapers. And so thank goodness for the internet, where people can get the alternative idea and the truth with respect to what freedom really means, and the role that government plays in depriving people of their freedom, infringing on freedom. That's what this show's all about. Anyway, that sort of is a good way to end the show. We're out of time, and thank you very much for tuning in. And this is the Libertarian Angle, and we'll see you next time.